Welcome to another episode of Erik Wait Whiskey Studies, and in this video I'm going to give you my top 10 for 2023. So at the beginning of the year, I like to do a little bit of whiskey reflection, a look on the past year and see what kind of a whiskey year it was in terms of whiskey events, whiskey experiences, whiskey travel, whiskey studies, and the whiskeys that I have had. 2023, absolutely awesome year. I've been into whiskey since 2016, and 2023 may have been my top year of all. Number one, I got to return to Scotland. Hadn't been to Scotland since 2019 due to the COVID, and so I really enjoyed my third trip to Scotland. And not only returning to Scotland, but able to go to the Springbank Whiskey School, spending 5 days at Springbank Distillery. An absolutely amazing experience, an invaluable experience, and it's contributing a lot to my current studies in studying for the Council of Whiskey Masters master exam. I don't know how I'm going to ever top that. In addition to that, got to return to the Bastards Ball. They had a break, at least in terms of people coming out to the Bastards Ball due to COVID. So it was great to be back in Austin, Texas, seeing some friends, tasting some really nice whiskeys, fellowshipping with the magnificent Bastards down there in Texas. And it was a more sort of chill event, I would say, a little more relaxed. And the weather was absolutely fantastic in October. So I was wholly hoping future Bastard Ball events, they'll keep it in the early October and definitely not have it like in July or August, it is extreme heat. I love Texas, love the people, love the whiskey, love the terrain, all that kind of stuff, but the crazy ass weather and the bugs are a bit much for a California boy who lives on the beach, okay? So, alrighty, so my first whiskey that I want to mention in 2023 actually originally made it part of my top 10, but then towards the end of the year, I had a whiskey that knocked it out of place. So my first whiskey, which is an honorable mention, is the Glengarry 12-year-old. This was quite a surprise. It had a slight earthy, almost smoky character to it when I first opened it up, and I thought maybe it had a little bit of peat in it. They used to do peated whiskeys, but it doesn't. I believe that little slight smoky whiff is coming from the sherry cask. This is sort of an under-the-radar whiskey. Don't hear a whole lot of people talking about it. I gave it 90 points. Coming in at number 10 is the Glen Turret 10-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey. This is the peat smoked, and this has just a whiff of smoke. When I first opened it, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be really something. I love this whiskey. Beautiful bottle, beautiful whiskey. In a sense, it can kind of remind you of the Glengarry in terms of like just a whiff of smoke, although this is actually peated, or rather than just getting a little bit of a smoky character from a sherry cask. Gave it 90 points. 90 points. If you can get a bottle of the Glen Turret 10-year-old, I highly recommend it. Now, they are vintage bottle. This is the 2022 release. So you're probably going to find 2023 out there. But if they are consistent in their production, it should be an absolutely fantastic bottle if you get a different vintage. Coming in at number 9 is the Glen Alaki 15-year-old. So this is the bottle that knocked Glengarry off of my top 10 list. I thought I had my top 10 list ready for the year, and then my very last review for 2023 jumped into my top 10 list. And this is the Glen Alaki 15-year-old. Absolutely fantastic balance in terms of sherry cask. Don't have the specifics in terms of the cask. It seems to me they're using some first fill and second fill, really well balanced. Just a nice hint of spice. Classic sherry notes of figs, dates, raisins, and a really long finish. But I think what really sells this one is the mouthfeel. The mouthfeel. It has sort of a mouth-coating, creamy, silky mouthfeel and a really long finish. And no sulfur notes. Coming in at number 8 is the Blair 15-year-old. So my next 4 whiskeys were all sort of competing for the same spot because they're all getting the same score. So I then have to do a retasting to see which one I want to put where on the list. Now, all my whiskeys are chosen for the top 10 based on, it has to be a whiskey that I reviewed. It has to be not just something I tasted, because I have other bottles here that I haven't reviewed yet, haven't got to yet. And even if I think they're better whiskeys, I can't put them on the list. I'll have to put them on the list for 2024. Or whiskeys that I tasted at events. When I went to the Springbank Whiskey School and was able to taste a lot of whiskeys at the Washback Bar at Springbank Distillery. I mean, superb whiskeys, ones that I wish I could have bought. The Springbank 12-year-old cask strength just was absolutely fantastic. If I could have gotten a bottle, it would probably be on my top 10 list. But because I tasted it, but not reviewed it, it's not on the list. So coming in at number 8 is the Blair 15-year-old Highland single malt Scotch whiskey. I would say this is, it's comparable to the Glen Alaki. Same score, 92 points, and for the very same reason in terms of the sherry cask influence, the balance, the length of finish, and just an absolutely superb whiskey. This is a classic sherry cask. Coming in at number 7 is the Springbank 10-year-old. Springbank 10-year-old, and I put this on my list just to tick off all the people who like to whine and complain that they can't get a bottle of Springbank. This is a May 2022 release, if I recall correctly. It has a small fine print on there. Yes, May 2022. Okay, this is probably the most hyped, but not overhyped distillery. And of course, having spent 5 days there and getting to know the people, and it being my home for 5 days, I got to have some Springbank in there. This is absolutely superb, 92 points. Great evolution in the mouthfeel and the aromas and flavors from the front and the middle into the finish, and length of finish, absolutely superb. I don't think there's another better 10-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey out there, period. So if you can get one, particularly if you can get it for under 120 bucks, I'm going to say it's an absolute must buy. Coming in at number 6 is the Springbank 15-year-old. Another bottle to piss off my viewers because it's near impossible to get is the Springbank 15-year-old bottle at 46% alcohol by volume. This is a sherry cask. So whereas the Springbank 10 is a bourbon and sherry cask, if I recall correctly, this is a 100% Oloroso sherry cask. Absolutely superb, but it has a distinctive, everybody likes to point this out, Springbank funk, a really unique character to it that I don't think is for the newbie necessarily. I think it takes a little bit of getting used to, but absolutely superb. Probably one of the most sophisticated, complex whiskeys out there. And it's not just because they're doing things old school. I think the old school take on whiskey production is so that they can be a whiskey museum. They are holding on to something in a town that nearly ceased to be a Scotch whiskey region. And so it's more about preserving something that hasn't been done this way in, 50 to 100 years. But the end result is, because there's the attention to detail in what they're doing, and they have ultimate control over everything, although they're not growing their own barley. But other than that, because they have so much control over everything, that they can have better control over the outcome. And that's why I think it comes out. Not that you have to do everything, with that much intense manual labor, but they do have more control, resulting in absolutely superb whiskey. So, Springbank 15-year-old. Coming in at number 5, the Hazelburn, the 10-year-old Campbelltown single malt Scotch whiskey. Yes, another bottle from Springbank. This one is one I brought back from the distillery. It's, triple distilled, a non-peated whiskey, unbelievably complex and layered, and a completely different experience from the front and into the middle and into the finish. I'm a little surprised. I surprised myself that I actually put this one above the previous two, because this isn't peated and I'm much more of a peat freak. But this is so unique. It has the citrus to it, and it has a character to it. It's not peated, and yet it has a distinctive earthy character to it. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think it comes from the direct fire stills. Also, potentially the worm tub is playing a note in there as well. Worm tub condenser. Absolutely superb. This one, I think, is a little bit more readily available here in the United States, but still very, very, very rare. Absolutely superb. If you ever get your hands on Hazelburn, Springbank, or Longrow, I highly recommend them. Coming in at number 4 is the Lefroy 16-year-old Islay single malt Scotch whiskey. So this one's probably going to be a bit of a surprise to a lot of people. This is absolutely superb. It is a very non-Lefroyan, that sounds a bit Freudian, non-Lefroyan Lefroy, because the peat is much more gentle, not as much as in your face as the stereotypical Lefroy. Absolutely superb. Still out there on the market and reasonably priced. If you can get a hold of this, I highly recommend it. I put this up against the Ardbeg 19-year-old Trayvon, and I actually, particularly for the price point, I preferred this over the Ardbeg Trayvon, their 19-year-old. Absolutely superb. This is sort of one that's not gotten a whole lot of talk, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Coming in at number 3 is the Bonhaban PX Cask. So I gave this one 94 points, and I know this is a whiskey. It's going to tick people off because, hey, I can't get it. I'm sorry. This is a bottle that I brought back from Bonhaban. Bonhaban is probably my either number 1 or number 2 favorite distillery on Islay. Was able to revisit in July 2023. I first visited in June 2018. One of the most spectacular views, spectacular tours. The biggest challenge with visiting the distillery is they have so many superb whiskeys there at the distillery that you can buy, but you can't fit it all in your luggage. And so it's a matter of, they might have 10, 15 different bottles that are not on the market, that are distillery only. And you're like, okay, man, what am I going to get? So I went with the Fischel, the PX Cask. Absolutely superb. Yes, you can find it on the secondary market, but it's going to be a bit challenging, undoubtedly a bit expensive. But if you can ever get to Islay and visit Bonhaban Distillery, these are the kind of bottles you're going to want to look out for. Fischel, Festival Island, is in May every year, but they tend to produce more bottles than what they're going to sell during the festival. So if you can get to Islay in, say, June or July, when it's not going to be as crowded as it would be in May, you can still find these bottles. So I highly, highly recommend them. Coming in number 2 is the Bmore 18-year-old Fischel Islay single malt Scotch whiskey. So this is aged in Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez cask. I like PX cask, but sometimes it can be a little bit over-domineering. Bmore has done an absolutely superb job with this one. Now, there is a Bmore 18-year-old that is part of the core range that is nothing like this one. They've done an excellent job with this, with the balance and the development on this one. I also have a Bmore Aston Martin. I prefer this over the Aston Martin, and this is cheaper. Yes, you can find this on the secondary market, but this is also a bottle which is so superb that it makes me a little irked at Bmore Distillery that they don't have something close to this available in terms of the core range. All the core range are 40 to 43%, undoubtedly chill filtered, and perhaps a little bit coloring in it, and sherry cash. They're nice, but they need something on there that is really the star of the show to really head up their core range. So Bmore, if you happen to be watching this, you need to put something, doesn't have to be this, something in your core range that has that little extra something for your consumers who can't make it to the island. Coming in at number 1 is the Glen Turret Highland Single Malt Scotch Whiskey. So my number 10 bottle and my number 1 bottle are both from Glen Turret, one being the 10-year-old, the other being the 12-year-old, and this is the 2021 release. I am going to keep my eyes out for Glen Turret. If I see something, I'm probably going to buy it. It's not going to be an if or a maybe or a question. I'm going to buy it. I am really, really, really happy with Glen Turret. I'm really amazed by it. I think it's the closest competitor to Springbank in terms of what they're doing. Now, they have had some recent changes in their production. They used to do a hand mashing. They now have a louder mash tun. I don't see that as having necessarily going to have a big impact. It maybe would have been better if they went from hand over to rake and plow. They would have maintained a little bit more of the maltiness doing that. But for now, that's neither here nor there. It's going to take 10 years or so until we see what the outcome is, because they just did some of the upgrades to their distillery. And I can say hand mashing, I mean, that's got to be a beast, right? Trying to hand mash your whiskey. So I understand the upgrade. Hopefully, it's not going to make a major change in the character of their whiskeys. So Glen Turret is not only, I would say, a new favorite of mine, but I think it's my distillery of the year. I know I love Springbank. 3 of their bottles are on my top 10, but Glen Turret, I'm hoping in 2024 when I return to Scotland for my 4th trip, I'm going to make a stop in at Glen Turret Distillery because I think they're doing something absolutely spectacular. Beautiful bottles, beautiful presentation, and absolutely superb whiskeys that have just a hint of peat that really adds a connecting element to all the other aromas and flavors and gives it a really nice underlying current from the front into the middle and into the finish, and a really nice long finish. Glen Turret, highly recommend him. And I'm almost a little hesitant to say that because I know what's going to happen is next thing you know, you're not going to be able to find Glen Turret because everybody is looking for Glen Turret. But if that's what happens, that's what happens. That's the way it goes in the whiskey world. All right, that's it for this top 10 for 2023. I'm looking forward to 2024 and returning to Scotland and going over to the Hebrides, the West Coast Islands, the only region or major area within Scotland that I haven't been to. So 2024, it's going to be an absolutely fantastic year, and I hope 2024 is going to be an absolutely fantastic year for you. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and check out these other whiskey videos.